Welcome back to DemoHub Pod, where we explore the cutting edge of tech and AI. Today, we're diving deep into Generative Adversarial Networks, or GANs. Now, if you're a tech professional like us, you probably heard the buzz, but what makes GANs so special?
Well, stick with us because we're going to break down everything, from the basics with explainer videos to some seriously in-depth research. By the end of this, you'll not only understand GANs, but also see how they're changing the game in tech. What I find fascinating is how GANs have really shifted the landscape of what AI can do. We're not just talking about machines that can recognize patterns or make predictions. We're talking about AI that can actually create, generate things like images, music, even text that are eerily realistic.
Exactly. So for those who are new to this, let's start with the basics. Think of it like this. You have two neural networks, a generator and a discriminator. Imagine the generator is like a counterfeiter trying to make fake money, like we saw in that YouTube video, a friendly introduction to generative adversarial networks. And the discriminator is like the police trying to spot those fake.
I love that analogy. And what makes it so powerful is this constant back and forth. The generator gets better at creating fakes, while the discriminator gets better at spotting them. It's a continuous loop of improvement, pushing both networks to become more sophisticated.
Yeah. So from that YouTube video with Ali Ghodsi, the generator starts off making pretty bad fakes, but the discriminator provides feedback, helping it improve. At the same time, the discriminator is getting better at spotting even the slightest flaws. This is where things get really interesting.
The magic happens because this competition drives both networks to a point where the generator is producing outputs that are incredibly close to the real thing. And this isn't just about making pretty pictures, as you might have seen in some examples. We're seeing GANs applied to so much more, like generating time series data, text, and even music. I mean, think about the potential there. If you're working on a software project, you could use a GAN to generate realistic test data. Or in marketing, you could use it to personalize content for specific audiences.
And it's not just about creating new data. One of the sources, the GAN Weekly Update, actually highlighted how GANs are being used for unsupervised machine translation. Now, that's pretty wild. Imagine a system that can learn to translate between languages without needing massive amounts of labeled data. That's the power of GANs and something called representation learning.
Exactly. Representation learning is this fascinating idea where the GAN isn't simply copying data, it's actually learning the underlying patterns and structure within that data. Think of it like this. If you train a GAN on images of animals, it will learn to represent features like eyes, fur, or legs, without ever being explicitly told what those things are. And this allows GANs to generate new variations that are both realistic and creative.
That's incredible. But of course, no technology is perfect. We did see some sources mentioning the challenges and limitations of GANs. What are some of the things that researchers are still grappling with?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is something called mode collapse. We even saw Ali Ghodsi touch on this in his YouTube video. It happens when the generator gets stuck in a rut, producing only a limited variety of outputs. Imagine an artist who can only paint landscapes, even though they have the skill to do much more. In technical terms, the generator might start producing only images of cats with green eyes. Even though the training data set had cats with a variety of eye colors, that's mode collapse. And there are ways to tackle this, like using techniques like mini-batch discrimination, which essentially helps the discriminator get a broader view of the generated data.
So essentially, it's about preventing the GAN from becoming too narrow in its focus. And another thing I saw mentioned, even in the Generative Adversarial Network Wikipedia entry, was the challenge of evaluating GAN outputs. How do you measure the quality of something that's subjective, like a piece of art or music?
That's a great point. Traditional metrics that we use to evaluate AI models might not be sufficient when we're dealing with subjective human perception. How do you quantify the creativity of a GAN-generated piece of music, for example? That's something that researchers are still trying to figure out.
It definitely makes you think about the intersection of art and technology in a whole new way. And on a more practical level, there's also the issue of computational resources, which that research paper, 14206.261 Generative Adversarial Networks, really highlights. Training these complex GANs can require a serious amount of processing power.
Absolutely. And as the complexity of GANs grows, so does the need for more powerful hardware and efficient training methods. This is definitely an area where we're seeing a lot of innovation and development.
So, lots to consider here. We got this powerful technology with the potential to revolutionize so many industries, but also some hurdles to overcome. What really jumps out at me is how these discussions in the AI Alignment Forum are bringing up the bigger picture, the broader implications of GANs. People are wondering how these models might change the tech landscape, both in terms of the opportunities and the potential risks.
It's interesting you bring up the AI alignment forum because
Ooh.
one of the hottest topics there is the impact of GANs on jobs. This is something that a lot of people are understandably concerned about. If AI can generate realistic code, write marketing copy, even compose music, what does that mean for people working in those fields?
Right. It's a question that comes up a lot, and it's something that Kai-Fu Lee addresses head-on. In his book, AI Superpowers, his argument isn't that AI won't automate certain tasks. It will. But that's not the whole story. He emphasizes that this shift will also create new jobs and opportunities that we can't even fully imagine yet.
I think that's a crucial point. It's not about AI versus humans. It's about how we adapt and evolve alongside this technology. Lee makes a compelling case for focusing on those uniquely human skills that machines can't replicate. Things like creativity, critical thinking, empathy, complex problem solving. These are the areas where humans will continue to excel and where new opportunities will emerge.
It's almost like AI is pushing us to become more human, to focus on what truly sets us apart. Instead of fearing AI as a job killer, we can see it as a tool that can free us from tedious tasks, allowing us to focus on more meaningful and fulfilling work.
I like that perspective. It's not about replacing human creativity, it's about augmenting it. And going back to the idea of GANs as tools, it's important to remember that their impact ultimately depends on how we choose to use them. This brings up another important aspect of the discussion, the ethical considerations surrounding GANs.
And that's something that the AI Alignment Forum discussions really delve into. One of the biggest concerns is the potential for misuse. For example, if GANs can create hyper-realistic images or videos, what's to stop someone from using them to create deepfakes for malicious purposes, like spreading misinformation or manipulating public opinion?
It's a valid concern. Deepfakes are a stark example of how this technology can be misused. It underscores the importance of developing safeguards and detection mechanisms to mitigate these risks. We need to be thinking proactively about how to prevent the malicious use of GANs, while still fostering innovation and responsible development.
It's like walking a tightrope. We want to unlock the potential of this technology, but we also need to be aware of the potential pitfalls and work towards solutions. And it's not just about malicious intent, there's also the question of bias, which came up in that Generative Adversarial Network Wikipedia article. If the data used to train a GAN is biased, the outputs will reflect that bias. That means we need to be very careful about the data sources we use and ensure fairness and representation in AI development.
Absolutely. We can't just assume that the data is neutral. We need to actively address potential biases in the data and in the algorithms themselves to ensure that GANs are used responsibly and ethically. And going back to something we touched on earlier, the challenge of evaluating GAN outputs becomes even more critical in this context. How do we measure fairness and bias in a way that aligns with human values and societal norms? These are not easy questions to answer, but they are essential questions that we need to be grappling with.
It seems like with all this incredible power comes incredible responsibility. As these technologies advance, we need to develop our own critical thinking skills and ethical frameworks to keep pace.
I couldn't agree more. It's not just about understanding the technical aspects of GANs. It's about understanding their societal impact and ensuring that they were used for good. And on a more positive note, there's a lot of exciting research happening around responsible development and application of GANs.
One thing that caught my eye was the Coursera specialization on generative adversarial networks. It specifically mentioned that GANs are being explored for privacy preservation, which is huge in today's data-driven world.
That's a really promising area of research. The idea is to use GANs to generate synthetic data sets that retain the statistical properties of the original data. But without containing any sensitive personal information, this could be a game changer for industries like healthcare or finance, where privacy is paramount. Imagine being able to train AI models on realistic data without compromising the privacy of individuals.
That would be incredible. It seems like we've only just begun to scratch the surface of what GANs can do. What's really striking to me is that all of this is happening right now. It's not some distant future scenario. It's the reality we're living in.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so important for all of us, especially tech professionals. To stay informed and engaged in these conversations, GANs are pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI, and the implications are far-reaching.
It's an exciting time to be in tech, but it's also a time for thoughtful reflection and responsible innovation. We need to ensure that we're shaping the future of this technology in a way that benefits everyone.
We've talked a lot about the potential of GANs and the challenges they present, but I'm really excited to dig into some concrete examples of how they're being applied. to real-world problems.
Absolutely. One of the most visually striking applications
Mm-hmm.
is in the realm of image processing and computer vision. We touched on this earlier with data augmentation. But GANs are doing some truly remarkable things in this space. That research paper on Generative Adversarial Networks highlighted a technique called image-to-image translation. And honestly, it blew my mind. We're talking about taking a simple sketch and turning it into a photorealistic image, or transforming a daytime scene into a nighttime one, almost like magic.
It is pretty magical. That YouTube video by Ali Ghodsi actually showcased a GAN that could generate images of horses or zebras based on basic input sketches. It's not just replicating the visual style of the training data, it's generalizing and creating new variations that weren't even present in the original data set.
It's not just copying and pasting, it's understanding underlying concepts and applying them in new and creative ways. That's what gets me excited. And this has applications beyond just cool visuals.
Right, definitely. Think about medical imaging, for example. GANs are being used to enhance the resolution of medical scans, which can lead to more accurate diagnoses. They're also being used to generate synthetic images for training purposes, which can help overcome data limitations in medical research.
That's credible. It's like GANs are giving doctors a superpower. And another area that's generating a lot of buzz is text generation. We've all seen the headlines about AI writing poetry or composing music. But it's not just about creative expression.
David Foster's book on generative deep learning goes into detail about how GANs can be used to generate all sorts of text, from dialogue that sounds like it was written by a human to actual lines of code. And remember that concept of representation learning we discussed earlier? Well, it applies here as well. GANs trained on text data can learn the nuances of language, grammar, and style, allowing them to produce human-quality text that's tailored to specific purposes.
It's like giving a machine the gift of language. The implications are huge. Think about chatbots that can have natural and engaging conversations, or AI assistants that can write reports and summaries based on complex data.
We're seeing a whole new wave of AI-powered tools that can automate content creation, making information more accessible and communication more efficient.
And as these models get more sophisticated, it really blurs the lines between human-generated and AI-generated content. It makes you think about what creativity and authorship mean in the digital age.
It's a fascinating question, and it's one that we'll need to keep exploring. As AI continues to evolve,
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the basic principles of GANs to their mind-blowing applications and the ethical considerations we need to be mindful of. What's clear is that this technology is here to stay, and it's changing the way we create, consume, and interact with information.
So, as we wrap up, we challenge you to think about the potential of GANs in your own field. How might these AI models be used to solve problems, create new opportunities, or enhance existing workflows?
It's a question worth pondering. We've seen today that GANs are not just a technological marvel, they're a catalyst for innovation across industries. It's up to all of us to shape their future in a responsible and beneficial way.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of generative adversarial networks. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
And don't forget to subscribe to DemoHub Pod. For more deep dives into the cutting edge of tech and AI, let us know what you think about GANs in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like and share it with your network. Until next time, keep innovating.